Barry Lyndon sounds super boring on paper. This is a long movie. This is a 3-hour movie.
Without elves and dwarves and sword fighting.
Yeah. Somehow, it's also never really boring.
When I first started it, I thought I was going to be super bored because of how it's presented. You know, I'm like, oh my God, it's 3 hours of like, you know, people talking about relationships and stuff and like people like sipping tea or something.
We open on someone trying to bang their cousin. Smash cut. You found that boring, huh?
Well, it opens up on like a baby statue and then it pulls out and these like two people are playing cards silently and it's like old and I'm like, oh no.
I'll never understand why I can't get any by playing Go Fish, but that's kind of how this movie starts. Barry Lyndon and his cousin seem to be playing Go Fish or something. The line that she said, so she takes off like her ribbon, tells him to look away, shoves it between her boobs, and then tells him to look at her and says, I've placed my ribbon somewhere on my person. You may find it, and I shall think very little of you if you do not. And
foreplay in the 1890s or whenever this took place.
If this wasn't his cousin, I'd be like, I love this game.
Seems like a pretty good game to me.
Yeah. And cousin marriage must have been culturally accepted in this time and place. He's like, I can't find it. She's like, let me help you. And shoves his hand between her boobs to find the ribbon. And he's like, nope, still can't find it. He's trying to be like, I don't want to do this, even though he kind of does want to do this. He seems to know it's a bad idea. They make out and it cuts away.
What time does this take place?
In the 1750s.
Okay, so I was way off. I knew I was way off. I'm like, 1890s seems later than this movie.
So we cut to further down the line, and he seems to be regularly seeing his cousin, but an officer has also taken interest in her, and it naturally causes some tension. And when Barry decides to confront her because she seems to be going with the officer, she kind of gets dumped by both of them at the same time. If social media existed back then, this movie clip would be taken and used as like a Sigma Grindset post.
Cousin Redmond Barry.
Miss Brady, it would appear you have something to discuss in private with this young man. Perhaps it would be best for me to withdraw.
Captain Quinn, I have nothing to discuss with my cousin in private.
Miss Brady, it would appear you have a great deal to discuss in private.
Good heavens, Captain Quinn, he is but a boy and don't signify any more than my parrot or lapdog.
Oh, indeed. Are you then in the habit of giving intimate articles of your clothing to your parrot or lapdog?
The officer and Barry end up in a duel. Barry wins the duel. The officer falls over and the doctor's like, he's dead, Jim. Barry has to go on the run. Why he thought that shooting her lover would make her love him, I'm a little lost on that, but Barry is an impetuous little scoundrel, he is. So he goes on the run. He's got some of his mom's money. He's got a horse, and he comes upon what might be the most civil robbery I've seen put to screen.
Yeah.
This robber has got a silver tongue. I almost wouldn't mind getting robbed by this guy.
Now, he ran away in the first place because he shot the guy, right? And the guy like owed his family like money or something like that, or he didn't owe, he promised his family money.
So because the officer was going to marry into the family, it was going to bring like 1,500 doubloons, or I forget what the currency was, guineas, maybe it was guineas, 1,500 guineas a year into the into the family. And so people are mad that like that money's gonna be gone now. While duels were civil, I don't think they were necessarily legal. They take his horse, they take his mom's money, and they basically tell him that there's a town 5 miles down the road and he best get to walking. He gets to a town, and while he's in town, the military's there being like, King George needs soldiers, and wouldn't it be great if all of you became soldiers? He felt like soldier life was gonna be like neato.
I thought he did that because that was like his only option in his situation.
I think he saw an element of glamour.
I love how it just hard cuts from the barker talking about, hey, everyone should join the military, and it just hard cuts to him in the uniform marching. Like he's just in the military. There's no recruit scene. He's just bam, he's there.
And because Barry is such a rapscallion, immediately picks a fight with one of like the biggest dudes among the ranks. In real life, The actor, Ryan O'Neal, is actually an amateur boxer and a pretty decent one. He is.
I didn't know that.
So he actually, looks like he straight up knows what he's doing.
Well, no wonder he won.
If you one guess who wins, it's Barry. Barry wins, and they hoist him high, and everybody thinks he's great. It should also be noted that earlier in that duel with the officer, the guy who plays as Barry's second in the duel, he's a family friend, is in the military and notices Barry in the military.
Yeah.
But this guy, he plays it cool. Well, the family friend gets to chatting with Barry and basically tells him, hey man, everything actually went according to plan. And Barry's like, what are you talking about? John Quinn, the man who also fell in love with his cousin, is not dead. They rigged the pistols in the duel to be non-lethal. So when Barry shot him, he shot him with I don't even remember what it was, non-lethal ammunition, like grass or something goofy.
There's a scene right before the duel where he his second hands him a gun. He's like, "This isn't my gun." He's like, "Nah, it's fine. Take it. Don't worry. It's up to code."
The family friend is like, "Yeah, the duel was rigged so that he would live and you would leave because they weren't gonna let that much money coming into the family per year just slide by," which is interesting. It wasn't even really about love. It was about money. They rigged it for money. When Barry asks, how's Nora? That's the cousin's name, Nora. Like, there is no Nora. And it's like, oh, no, did she die? Because she's now Mrs. Captain Quinn. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? She married him. They got married after they rigged the duel to get Barry out of the way. So he ran away for nothing. He joined the military ultimately for that. He got robbed, lost all of his mom's money for nothing. So a battle comes up and he and his second are at the battle, and the second gets hit in the gut with a musket, and Barry carries him out of battle into the nearby forest, and his buddy says to him, "Kiss me, me lad, for we shall never meet again." And boy, does he, right on the mouth.
Yeah, he gives him the Tom Brady kiss.
Oh, yeah. He gives him the Brady
right.
Classic, and the second graduates from this life and moves on to ever yonder. Barry kind of decides that the military, hey, turns out it kind of sucks, and I had to watch one of my best friends die. So he comes upon two dudes bathing in the river nearby.
They're professing their love for each other, yeah.
Barry takes one of those two dudes' horses and books it. And he takes the guy's papers that are on the horse.
So he can impersonate him. I love that scene because, it's just there's one shot at the end where he just, slowly takes the horse and walks off screen. And you can hear them in the background, professing their love for each other. And just the way it's framed is just really funny.
They probably should have noticed, but whatever.
They probably should have noticed, yeah.
Horses are not small, but okay. While Barry runs, he comes upon a woman running a farm, and her husband is away at war. And Barry, being the cheeky little devil that he is, has an affair with this woman. He's like, hey, I have nothing to eat. Can I stay here? And she's like, well, I guess. And he's like, I don't have any money. How else can I pay for the food? After destroying the foundation of a marriage, Barry Lyndon hops on his horse and leaves. He's like, this has been really fun, but I'm gonna go. I find Barry to be an interesting character. He's not really a good person.
He's a product of the society that he lives in.
Who chose to never rise above it.
Morally, you mean?
Yeah. Gotta make choices at some point, don't you? Or are you truly always disconnected if you're born disconnected? Big questions. Big questions. While he's on his journey, he gets stopped by a Prussian captain and gives the name Fakenham. The captain's like, hey, show me your papers. So he does, and the captain's like, where are you headed? He's like, oh, I'm off to blah, blah, blah. And the captain's like, well, blah, blah, blah is the other way, soldier. He's like, oh, wouldn't you know it? The guy who drew up my map must be stupid. And he's like, well, why don't you have dinner with me? We'll get you a map. We'll get you set right. And while they're having dinner, the captain is just kind of him. The captain is placating Barry's ego. He sees right through him.
He does lead him on for a long time.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? It's worth it. He leads him on so long that there's no way Barry can get out. Okay. And I kind of appreciate it. He lets Barry dig himself a big old grave. Barry eventually is called out. He's like, hey, here's all the things he said that are wrong. You're under arrest. And your punishment is to go into the Prussian military service.
All of this happens in 1 hour, by the way. We're only 1 hour into this movie. A lot has happened in 1 hour.
A ton is happening. While in a battle, That captain who caught him is pinned under a wooden beam, and Barry saves his life and gets him out of there, and is commended with a couple of doubloons that, if you read about, for some reason took an ungodly amount of takes for him to pick up the coins. Stanley just was not satisfied with how Ryan was picking up the coins. The comments that they give him while he accepts this award are so backhanded, I kind of loved it. Not even like passive aggressive, but still backhanded. Like, he takes the money. He's told, hey, what you did was really good, but you have no principles. And you're kind of a scoundrel and not that great of a person. Good job being a good person in that specific moment. Here's your money. It's a pretty sophisticated diss.
That's kind of an interesting takeaway for the character, though, because he's like, oh, morals get me nowhere, but certain actions will get me money, you know? So people looking down on me doesn't really. So do you think
he did it because he knew he'd be commended, or do you think he did it because he actually wanted to save his life?
Based off of what I've seen from Barry's actions and from the themes of the film, I think that he did it for money, because he knew that he would get commended for it.
I don't know if I think the same. Part of me thinks there's a little bit of Barry that would be like, am I going to regret this later? Like, I could do something, but am I going to regret this later? War does things to a person that would normally take them outside of their base characteristics.
Yeah, like maybe it's the movie saying like, no, there is a human in there.
Barry's response is more or less, well, I never had a dad growing up. So how can you expect me to be a good person? So after this, he gets promoted to cop. I don't know if that's a promotion or not, but he gets promoted to like a police outpost or something. And he's asked to spy on someone who came in from Ireland. And they make a whole fake story for him to get into this noble's good graces, because Barry is Irish. Barry, when he meets the Chevalier, he immediately feels like this is a kindred spirit, and folds immediately blows his own cover. Like, no questions asked. Immediately tells this guy, hey, I'm a spy. They sent me to spy on you, but I'm from Ireland, and I miss home. And the Chevalier has immense sympathy towards Barry. He misses home. He misses his life. So the Chevalier takes him in, and they start making fake stories to feed back the Prussian military. And they become scoundrels together. So they make fake reports that basically make the Chevalier's life sound pretty uneventful. Like, not a lot is going on, just feeding the Prussian military. Not like necessarily totally bogus info, but just leaving out anything that's important. Together, they start running like a gambling business out of the Chevalier's home, and they cheat together. They cheat people out of their money together, and they're really, really good at it. During a game, a guy calls them out, and the Chevalier says, no, we're not cheating. Even though they're totally cheating, like 100%. They just keep on like cheating a bunch of rich people out of money, but not calling the money in necessarily. They kind of like let the debts fester and let it linger. When it comes time to call the money in, occasionally they will duel for it. Not a deadly duel. They'll use like fencing foils with pointed tips, and Barry's a really good fighter, so Barry fights the fights. And they not only win money at the table, they embarrass them on the battlefield. Barry finds out through the Prussian military that the intention is to have the Chevalier exiled, which would take this life away from Barry. Barry sure doesn't want that, so, of course, Barry tells the Chevalier he is to be exiled. And so they make a plan. Barry dresses as the Chevalier because the Chevalier has like a routine route that he takes on like a daily ride. The Chevalier already left early that morning, and at the time he would normally take his ride, Barry takes his place and is essentially escorted out of the country by the military he was spying for. They get out with a bunch of money, and they become traveling high society gamesmen. They go from place to place and scam rich people out of their money at the poker table, or whatever game they're playing. I'm not even sure what they're playing. I also wrote down that at about an hour, 28 minutes, and 36 seconds, there's an actor who looks a lot like Dennis Reynolds to me.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. I thought that too.
In what I thought was a strange moment, when he loses, he turns and like kisses one of the ladies he's with at the table. I don't know why. I wrote that down. I just thought it was weird. It was a very strange bit for that character.
It's like, oh, I've lost. I need some sugar.
Yeah, give me a quick dopamine hit, baby. I wrote about the fight that he wins with those fencing foils that are blunted. For some reason, even in this movie, created by as meticulous of a director as Stanley Kubrick, someone just does a fancy spin in the middle of the fight. Don't know why. They just spin. They do like a parry, and instead of like recovering their position, they spin their entire body and show their opponent their entire back. We cut forward, and on their travels, we meet the Viscountess of the House of Lyndon. She is married to an older gentleman who is wheelchair-bound with gout, who has a son. But even though her husband's still alive, they are making eyes at each other from across the gambling table. As he does, Barry makes eyes with any woman with a pulse. Barry might be one of the straightest characters I've seen in any movie, even though he still kisses men on the mouth in this movie.
Only if they die.
He's a little less hetero when men are dying. But when men are alive, boy, howdy. This guy, if there's a curve in the road, he doesn't take it. He keeps driving straight. She decides it's getting a little hot in there and goes outside, and he follows her. And before they say much to each other, they're immediately making out outside. Time has
passed. You say the word immediately a lot.
Am I?
You've said it like 15 times since we started recording.
Well, this guy does move fast.
I don't even think they do talk. I think they just make eyes. They have like these me eyes during the games, and then they go outside and then they just make out. I don't think they speak at all, do they?
When do they make out?
It's right when they go outside.
Like, how long after they go outside?
Right away.
Mm-hmm. Like immediately?
Right away, yes.
So blammo, they make out, and some time passes. Enough time that some time has passed, and Barry comes upon the husband, and the husband calls Barry out hard. You're trying to get with my wife, waiting out my health condition, so if I die, she gets my money, you marry her, and you would get all of my shit. I know what you are trying to do. I know what kind of person you are. And Barry is like,
why, good heavens, sir, I don't know what you're talking about. I never stoop to such a level, such impropriety that I am actively trying to stoop to.
And the husband's like, oh, curse you, Barry. And then the husband has like a huge coughing fit. Like the husband's like, I'll never die. And then shortly after he dies. And after the husband passes, it's like the end of part 1 of this movie. So the movie's split into 2 parts with an intermission built into it. Part 2 opens 1 year later on the Viscountess and Barry's wedding. And it is by this wedding that he becomes Barry of the House of Lyndon. So he is now Barry Lyndon. A bit of time passes, and they are married, but he is still not a good person. Just as a way to illustrate that Barry is not only a philanderous rapscallion, but also just kind of an inconsiderate. He and his wife are riding in a carriage while he's smoking, and she says, hey, do you mind maybe not doing that in here? It's not really playing well with me. And he blows smoke in her face and then kisses her. Really strange, manipulative behavior. He's like, I'm gonna do whatever the I want, and you're gonna kiss me back. And we also learn pretty quick that her son, whose name is Bullington, doesn't like Barry, is not happy with this. And he's young. He's gotta be like 9, 10, maybe 11 years old. And sees right through Barry. Like, sees through Barry more than his own mother does. So they have a baby named Brian. Immediately after we see they had a baby, we see that Barry is cheating in the only shot in this movie with any nudity. Which is interesting, for all the military men and all of them bathing in the river, that the only nudity in this movie still managed to be 2 pairs of boobs. Life found a way, I guess. Fun fact, in that single shot where he's making out with those ladies, the guy who's passed out in the chair on the left is the cinematographer.
That's funny.
So I don't know who was running the camera during that shot, but I guess good job to them, because it was a good shot. The camera's just slowly panning out by a candlelit interior while some men are singing a sea shanty while Barry Lyndon alternates back and forth between making out with 2 gals. Barry essentially keeps the Viscountess by herself. Kind of keeps her sequestered from the world. Not like full-on Rapunzel, but he's pretty controlling. He's a controlling and manipulative husband. But she catches him cheating while walking about the property. Catches him kissing one of her own maids. And he sees her catch him. Like, he knows it. Dead to rights. So she's in despair. She's distraught. And she's in the bathtub while her maids read her poetry, read her a story. And he comes in and he walks up to the tub, takes her hand and goes,
I'm sorry.
And she's like, oh, okay, come here, you. Bullington still hates him because the stepson also was there when he got caught kissing the maid as well. So everything Bullington suspected about Barry Lyndon is coming to be true. Bullington calls him out on it, like calls Barry Lyndon out on it as a child, and Barry doesn't like that. So he takes a stick and beats Bullington's butt with it. Now, I don't know if this is supposed to be like this society's version of a cordial spanking, but it's like a stick, like a mix between a whip and a stick. It looks like it hurts. Barry believes that Bullington always decided to just hate Barry no matter what. Like he'd made up his mind and nothing would ever change it, which is a ludicrous notion to believe after Bullington caught you making out with one of the maids, but whatever. And so time passes and Bullington grows up always hating Barry. It's been, I want to say, 8 years or so. Bullington is not quite an adult. I would say like late adolescence. And Brian is about 8 years old or so. And Barry pampers Brian, adores Brian, gives Brian everything he wants and more. And this far down the line, we reunite with Barry Lyndon's mother, who we haven't seen since practically the beginning of the movie. We don't know much about the mom from the beginning. She just sends her son off with money and is like, take care of yourself. Here's some money. Love you lots. So now we start to actually learn about the mom and find out that maybe it's hereditary because she also is not a good person. She's like out for the estate. This is our chance to make it rich. But we're poor, and anytime Barry does business, he needs his wife to sign off on the papers because she's the one who inherited money from her late husband. So Barry needs his wife to do anything, and they're trying to make it so that that's not the case. She pushes Barry to pursue lordship, and he knows the right people to make it happen, so he becomes Lord Lyndon, and he uses a tie to a barrister to get it. In order to put up the image of a lord, he spends a ludicrous amount of money to pay for stupid cosmetic things like paintings he doesn't actually care about. And who's actually paying for all of it? His wife, signing off on papers and getting deeper and deeper into depths. So some time passes and we cut to Brian and Bullington studying under the Reverend who works at the household. And Brian accuses Bullington of stealing his pencil. And Brian's like, I didn't take your pencil. And the kid's like, you're using my pencil right now. And it just really gets under Bullington's skin. And Bullington spanks Brian. Is then taken by Barry and smacked with a bigger, harder stick. Bullington is a very interesting character to me, particularly in this scene. He's getting hit, like he doesn't fight it. He doesn't try to beat up Barry. He doesn't try to grab the stick. He doesn't put up any physical resistance. He takes the beating through huge crocodile tears, looks at Barry and just says, I will never submit to you again. He's broken, but he's angry at the same time. It's like he's too scared to actually do something in the moment, but knows he'll regret letting this moment go by without any resistance. So we cut to a concert. And so Bullington brings Brian to the concert in the loudest shoes possible. Some real clappers. And they just go parading right down the center aisle. And Brian thinks this is great because he's been brought up by Barry and the concert just kind of comes to like a grinding halt. Stops the whole concert and calls out Barry and his own mother in front of everybody. Bullington shows the biggest force of resistance to Barry in front of people. Makes a huge spectacle about it. He also goes up to his mother and says, man, it's too bad that, like, I'm a thing isn't it? Or else, the kid could just have everything. The Viscountess is like, Bullington, you're not being fair. Bullington essentially is like, Barry changed you. Like, look at what he's done to you. He has messed up your life. He's messed up my life. He's cheated on you. He's rude. He's a total punk. He uses the term open infidelity. This dude's just a total dick to you. And you're letting it happen. And you're still going to let it happen. And this really upsets her. She takes Brian and leaves. And Barry gets up and beats the out of Bullington in front of everybody. Totally snaps. Completely comes apart and wails on Bullington. And all the noise brings the Viscountess and Brian back into the room. There's a shot of Brian smiling as he gets pulled out of the room again by his mother, who doesn't want to see this happen. Brian thinks this is great. So now that high society has seen Barry wailing on Bullington and being completely unfair to him, they kind of look down on him. There's a scene where Barry sees one of his acquaintances at a dining room table to get some food, and he's like, hey, we're having some people over to play cards soon. Do you want to come over? And the guy's super passive-aggressive about it. He's like, I'll have to check my schedule that day. We'll write. We'll get back to you. We'll let you know. And now that so many people in higher society have seen Barry for who he is, a lot of them lose their fear of calling in their debts. They lose their passive aggression, and his wife is constantly saving his ass. We cut to a few different scenes in this movie of her just signing documents, giving away money that she inherited. Brian's birthday is coming up, and Brian, who is totally being brought up to be a reasonable child, tells his dad he wants an entire horse for his birthday, because all he has is a stupid pony. He wants a horse. So Barry, being the pushover of a dad that he is, goes to a farm and buys one for him, but leaves it there and says it's going to be a surprise, so don't tell my kid. Brian figures out what's going on and runs away to the farm to see the horse. Brian disobeys, goes to see the horse, and gets on the horse, and the horse isn't having it and throws Brian off. And Brian must hit his head on a rock or something.
I think, didn't the horse fall on him? Or am I crazy?
I thought about that. The horse might have fallen on him. You could be right. I crossed my mind. Because the way the shot was framed, I was like, did it fall on him? Did he just fall off it and hit his head? Did he? I'm not sure. Barry goes to the farm, finds his son being kind of wheelbarrowed out of the farm by some dudes who are bringing him home. And one of the first things Brian says might be one of the saddest lines in this movie.
Yeah.
He says,
"You won't whip me, will you?"
Jeez, dude. How bad of a dad do you have to be for your son's first question after getting thrown off a horse to be, you're not going to hit me, are you? You got to be a pretty bad dad. You got to be a pretty bad dad.
They should rename this movie Dad of the Year.
So there's this whole scene of the Viscountess and Barry on each side of Brian's bed. Now that I'm actually thinking about it, is a nice little representation of the divide in the house. They both love their son, but they are also divided. They are on opposite sides of each other, but they're both on their son's side, by their son's side. You know what I mean? So they each have his hand, and Brian basically says, "Am I going to die?" Barry's like, "No, you're not going to die. I won't let it happen." "Well, it sure feels like I'm going to die, so I want you two to make me a promise." "Anything, Brian. Anything you want, we promise. Promise me you won't fight each other anymore." Barry, on the outside, is like, "I promise we won't." But on the inside, he's like, "Fat chance, kid." Brian dies. Barry, super depressed, drunk depressed, getting hammered every night. While both parents are in despair, guess who takes charge of the household? Do you want to venture a guess who takes charge of the house? Barry Lyndon's mother! Barry Lyndon's mom takes charge of the house and seizes a bit of power behind the scenes and fires the reverend that was tutoring the sons because she feels like he doesn't really have a place in the house anymore.
I mean, he doesn't.
There's nothing really for him to do.
some budget cuts going on. We can't really keep you on. It's purely budgetary.
We're cutting the Department of Education here in the Lyndon household. You need to go. And he does something that's really hard for me to believe any pastor would do nowadays and says, I don't need the money. All I really want to do is help the Viscountess. Barry's mother blames the Reverend for the mother's distress, which is wild. And he is not having any of it and calls her out for trying to put blame on him and sees her trying to get money out of this, trying to manipulate things so that she and Barry can work their way into the will and get all of her money. They're trying to take the Viscountess's fortune. The Viscountess, in her despair after losing Brian, tries to poison herself, and thankfully she doesn't do a very good job, but makes herself violently ill and puts her body through a lot of pain. After this, we cut to more time having passed. Bullington is a strapping young adult, and his hatred for Barry has not waned in the slightest. And we come upon what might be the most famous scene in the movie. So Bullington shows up to the Lyndon household, finds Barry, and basically says like, hey, the last time you and I interacted, I don't really like how we left things off, and I demand satisfaction. So he challenges Barry to a duel, a pistol duel, and Barry accepts Bullington's challenge. Now, before I get into this scene, I just want to tell you, this scene is the first part of this movie I ever saw. A long, long time ago, this movie was playing on TV. It might have been on, like, I'm trying to remember what channel it was on. For some reason, I want to say it was on Spike TV, but that can't be right, because Spike TV is garbage. Do you remember Spike TV?
A little, yeah.
It was like a new network that bought one of the other channels. They were basically like, we're the man channel. This is a show about the best position to f***in.
Was the Man Show on Spike TV?
I think the Man Show was on Comedy Channel, but I bet it had reruns on Spike TV.
It was on that or like Comedy Central.
That show wasn't problematic at all.
Oh, no, not at all.
Not one bit.
Now, girls, jumping on trampolines.
I saw this duel scene on TV. I think I was in high school at the time. This scene grabbed me and I watched it all the way through. They go out to the barn. A very lovely barn. Hay on the floor, cross-shaped windows, the whole thing made out of stone. Very lovely. Also adorned with random white doves. Eat your heart out, woo. So basically the rules are that whoever's the first to fire is going to be the winner of this coin toss. So they ask Bullington, since he's the challenger, to call heads or tails. So Bullington calls heads, and it lands heads. Barry has to prepare to receive fire. And I found this interesting. To prepare to receive fire, Barry turns sideways. Now, I think I understand why. I think it's to reduce the odds of being hit, to slim yourself out. You know what I mean? To show your profile so that there's less area exposed directly to the barrel of the gun. I think that's a little risky because if the gun hits you in the side, it's gonna up more of your organs than if you were facing forward. That's the risk they decide to take, I guess. So Barry turns his side to him. Bullington is told,
cock your pistol.
And as he does, he messes up the hammer, lets it go as he's pulling it back, and the gun fires into the ground.
Yeah.
But as per the rules of the duel, he has fired and must now prepare to receive fire from Barry.
That really sucks.
Ugh. I
was like, damn, man. Like, all he did was cock his pistol and it went off. Like the gun malfunctioned. So he's like, you're telling me that I might lose my mortal soul on a technicality?
All I want to do is shoot my stepdad. Is that so much to ask? Come on, guys. They're telling him, like, you gotta get ready for this. And in response, Bullington vomits. He actually vomited for this scene.
Really?
He did. Right before the take, they basically had him eat a really heavy meal, but it didn't quite work. So he ate a raw egg and immediately threw it up.
Gross.
And Stanley, being known for doing a ludicrous amount of takes, was happy after one take and did not make the actor do that again.
Thank God.
Yes, meticulous though he was, it seems he had a soul. Not for Shelley, but for this guy. So he prepares to receive fire, and Barry does something pretty big here. And I really want to know why you think he did this. Barry points his pistol into the ground and fires.
I think he shot into the ground because losing a child has changed him. This is kind of his only, like, child per se. Like, this kid was kind of his kid, you know? And he's the only one he has now.
I do think Barry does not like Bullington. I think Barry doesn't care for this kid. Barry may have told himself, I do care about him, but his actions show otherwise. Barry has lost a lot of his status for beating Bullington up in front of everybody. So how bad would it be if he killed him?
Yeah.
He could lose even more than he already has, and he's lost a lot. Like, his is basically being saved by nobody but his wife, severely distressed and depressed at all times now. After Barry does this, everybody's pretty surprised. Big play by Barry down center field. So they look over and they're like, Lord Bullington, in light of Barry's actions, have you received satisfaction, sir? Again, through tears, looks up and just says, I have not, and decides that even though almost dying was the scariest experience of his life, now that I'm through it, it's worth having another shot. So they give him another pistol that's loaded up, and they count to 3 for Bullington to fire at Barry, and Bullington fires. And it connects. Barry is shot in the leg. You know, I'm curious to know, like, back then, man, do you aim at someone's stomach and still hit them in the leg? That's so much drop. That's a lot of drop for the velocity,
I was wondering about that because it looked like he aimed right at his torso.
Yeah, that's a lot of drop to still have enough velocity to break skin. And it blows Barry back, man. He's on the ground. He's yelling. He's screaming. Barry is taken to the doctors where the doctor basically says, yeah, well, sucks to be you right now. We're going to have to cut this off below the knee. And Barry's like, do I have to? And the doctor's like, yeah, it's either that or the infection spreads and you die. So pick your poison. So the leg is taken off.
I saw a thing, I don't know if it's true, but I saw a little trivia thing about how Kubrick actually asked Ryan O'Neal if he'd be willing to chop his leg off.
And I saw that too. I've got to wonder if that's like an urban legend.
That's got to be an urban legend, right?
Either an urban legend or maybe that was like Stanley's sense of humor. He's such a serious, meticulous director who does everything so practically and so by his own rule book that maybe people don't even know when he's joking.
Yeah, it's got to be something like that.
Because that's a ludicrous thing to ask of anybody.
It is.
I did write that I don't think 10 paces is very far for a pistol duel, but those were the rules, I guess. Now that Barry is kind of out of commission, Bullington makes plans to get his mother out of the household and to London. And also, those plans include making it so that she doesn't even see Barry while he's at the doctor's. As he's creating this plan, who do we see beside Bullington helping him come up with this scheme than the Reverend? Bullington puts together a plan. They will give Barry 500 guineas a year to leave England forever. Maybe that's why I'm doing an English accent, because there were English accents. They will give 500 guineas a year to Barry to completely all the way off. Or, alternatively, Bullington will aggressively push for the debts to cave in on Barry, and he would go to jail for them. And it works. Barry leaves. He goes back to Ireland and lives with his mother. He goes back to gambling across Europe, and he never sees the Viscountess again. We see her signing more papers, giving more money away for whatever, but she comes across the piece of paper that says that this signature would authorize the payment of 500 guineas to Barry for him to stay away from her. And she gives, after signing that paper, the faintest little smile. It's super small, but I feel like it's there. The littlest smile that she is finally free from him. That is more or less the end of Barry Lyndon.
I like that Barry Lyndon is about a guy who was taken advantage of by so many people in his younger years. And it's kind of like life just keeps like dealing him a bad hand. You know, people keep taking advantage of him in some way. And he starts to kind of slowly learn that like, oh, this is just how life is. And he eventually becomes the guy taking advantage of other people, you know, through gambling and stuff.
He does not make the choice to fight the system that manipulated him. He completely assimilates into it. He almost masters it, really.
Yeah, almost.
Total manipulator. He's a narcissist. I would say he's kind of a psychopath. Not even kind of. He is a psychopath. His ego is fragile. He's a total philanderer, constantly cheating on his wife. You know, I feel like part of him does start that way. He has moments. He does save people in this movie. He does love his second, the captain, who he mouth kisses on his deathbed. I think he does genuinely care about these people. The Chevalier, they are best buddies.
I think he became that way though because of his experiences. Like I don't think he started off that way. You were saying that like he in the beginning kind of is a bad person, but how is he a bad dude in the beginning? His earlier years before the Viscountess. How is he not I mean, he's not like a saint, but like he just seems pretty like things happen to him in the beginning. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't seem to like make bad, like he makes bad decisions, but like he doesn't make like selfish or immoral decisions in the beginning, I don't think.
Well, he does throw the glass in the captain's face, which slices his face at the dinner table. There was that.
That doesn't make him a bad person though. That just means he's a kid who's heartbroken and angsty and doesn't know how to properly.
Because this is one of those things where I think my feeling about the character is that this was always in him a bit. But I think you're right in calling me out for not really being able to cite some specific examples right off the bat. So one of the characters we know very little about over the course of this movie is Barry's mother. Barry's mother is a lot like Barry in that she's kind of out for herself. She's out for money. She's out for blood. She's out for whatever helps her. She ends up being incredibly manipulative. Thinking about it, Barry grew up with her. I think a bit of her rubbed off on him to begin with, even before he saw war. I think he was always a bit of a schemer. She had to have been a bit of a schemer before she came to high society with him, right?
Sure.
You don't agree with me.
I just don't see when he was like really a bad person before the war. I don't see any evidence of that personally.
You don't think so?
No, he just seems like he's young and dumb. And then he's like, oh, society's a bunch of people who just take from you. Okay, cool. I'm going to do that then.
Yeah, I do think he's young and dumb. I do think he's young and dumb, but I think he had a threat of manipulation to begin with. It's okay.
I just don't see when. I don't see when.
Agree on this.
Yeah.
I think he gets it from his mom. I don't know. This is hard to articulate.
Maybe it just didn't come out till later.
Maybe, yeah. I don't think he's always, like every moment of every day, a bad person. This is a really interesting character to me. I do think war pushed him in a way to be like, I'm going to get what I can while I'm alive. I like this movie. I like it a lot. The script is really good. The characters are super engaging.
It looks great, too.
Oh, this movie's shot. Man, we didn't even talk about it. This movie is famous for its cinematography. This movie looks incredible. So for this movie, Stanley wanted to use, there's like kind of an urban legend that no artificial lighting was used in this movie. From what I can tell, that's not true. There's a lot of interior shots at night lit by candlelight. The candles are specially made. They put 3 wicks to a candle instead of 1, so every candle would burn much more brightly. And the wax, as a result, was melting a lot more quickly, so they didn't have a lot of time on these takes. The lenses for this movie were like made by NASA. They were meant to be used for like photographing the moon or something.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And Stanley was like, only lenses for space photography will do for my next picture. And so
that's what Stanley sounds like.
It is now. And so He ordered lenses from NASA to be made and adapted for this movie that shoot in an aperture of 0.7. For those of us in our audience that means anything to, that is crazy. Basically, it means your lens is letting in a ton of light, but your focus is super shallow. It would take barely bumping the knob for your focus to go completely out of your whack and for characters to just become blurry. Stanley said, "I shall have 3 of these lenses." It looks gorgeous, but it has to be meticulously shot when you're shooting as low as 0.7.
What year did this come out?
This movie came out in 1975. It is in IMDb's top 250. It is rated at 186. It won 4 Academy Awards, 7 nominations. It was up for Best Picture, Director, Adapted Screenplay, Cinematography, Art Decoration, Set Decoration, Costume Design, and Score. It won for score, costume design, art decoration, and cinematography. The cinematographer was John Alcott. That is Barry Lyndon. I recommend it. It's not really streaming anywhere. You can rent it on Amazon, I think. I got it from the local library. Use your library, folks. Libraries are great. I don't know. What do you want to say?
Don't use your library system, folks.